Back up. I'm not asking you again, pal.
Have a reservation.
I don't care what kind of fake nonsense you typed up on your phone.
This is a private event. You don't fit the profile. Walk away before I make you walk away.
If you touch me, you are violating international law.
I suggest you check the list, Mr. Rourke.
Did you just threaten me?
The guard grabs the lapel of the subject's three-piece suit. The interaction has moved from verbal noncompliance to physical battery in less than 22 seconds. Dr. Samuel Attawale is 45 years old. He holds a doctorate in international economics from Oxford University and currently serves as a senior trade envoy for the Nigerian mission to the United Nations. On the evening of October 14th, he was scheduled to give a keynote address at a gala hosted by the Global Commerce Chamber in Washington, D.C. His annual salary exceeds $300,000, excluding his diplomatic stipends. He is wearing a bespoke suit valued at $4,000 and carrying credentials that grant him absolute immunity from arrest, detention, or harassment under the 1961 Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. He arrived at the venue via a hired black car service, tasked simply with walking through the front door to do his job. Kevin Rourke is 32 years old. He is a senior security supervisor for Ironclad Protection Services, contracted to manage the venue's perimeter. He earns $22 an hour. His personnel file reveals he applied to the Metropolitan Police Department twice, failing the psychological screening on his second attempt due to zero. Over his 6 years in private security, Rourke has been the subject of 4 formal complaints regarding racial bias and excessive force. In 3 of those incidents, the complainants were black men attempting to access areas Rourke had deemed off-limits. In all previous cases, his employer settled quietly or dismissed the complaints as, quote, 1/9 scenarios. This background creates a critical asymmetry. We see a highly educated diplomat operating under the assumption that the law protects him, facing a guard operating under the assumption that his uniform grants him the power to define the law. When a security professional initiates physical contact without an immediate threat of violence, they cross a legal threshold. Rourke claims he felt threatened, yet the video evidence shows Dr. Attawale standing still. In situations where authority figures misinterpret calmness for arrogance, escalation often follows. Do you believe private security should ever have the right to physically detain someone solely for quote, before police arrive? Or is this essentially kidnapping? Write your reasoning in the comments below. The setting is the Vanguard Club in Georgetown, Washington, D.C. It is an area defined by historic brick row houses, cobblestone streets, and the quiet, heavy atmosphere of old money. The club itself is a fortress of exclusivity, a renovated bank building with marble columns and heavy oak doors that stifle the noise of the city. The lighting is intentionally dim, cast by gas-style lamps that create deep shadows along the entryway. The demographic of the neighborhood is predominantly white and affluent, yet the city of D.C. itself is diverse. This creates friction points at the boundaries of these exclusive zones. The air on this particular October night is crisp, 55 degrees Fahrenheit. The street is lined with luxury sedans and limousines. The sensory environment is one of hushed privilege. Voices are low. Movements are slow. It is a world designed to keep the chaotic reality of the public at bay. For the patrons inside, the security team is a silent utility, an invisible wall meant to filter out the quote 3. Psychologically, Dr. Attawale feels entirely secure. He has spent the last decade moving through the highest corridors of global power. He carries a diplomatic passport, a document that functions as a master key to international borders. In his reality, a security guard is a functionary to be bypassed with a flash of identification. He does not perceive himself as a suspect because, in his professional life, he is the authority. He anticipates bureaucratic friction, perhaps, but not physical danger. Rourke, however, is operating on a different psychological frequency. For him, the Vanguard Club is his domain. He suffers from what behavioral analysts call quote 4. He views the entrance not as a door, but as a border he must defend. His internal bias, reinforced by the complaints in his file, codes a solitary black male, regardless of attire, as a potential threat or an interloper. He interprets Attawale's calm refusal to leave not as diplomatic confidence, but as, quote 5, The lack of fear in Attawale's eyes challenges Rourke's self-perception of power. To Rourke, Attawale's presence is a violation of the order he is paid to maintain. He has successfully bullied people away from this door before. He assumes this interaction will follow the same script. At 1942-15, the entryway surveillance camera captures the escalation. Rourke has maintained his grip on Dr. Attawale's lapel for 8 seconds. Quote, "So." Attawale's voice remains modulated. He does not raise his hands to strike, nor does he attempt to break the grip violently. He simply looks down at Rourke's hand, then back up to his eyes. Quote, 7. The audio recording from the camera, positioned 4 feet above their heads, picks up no slur in Attawale's speech. Forensic analysis of Attawale's movements shows zero ataxia or swaying associated with intoxication. Rourke is manufacturing a pretext, a false justification to legitimize his physical aggression. Quote, Attawale brushes Rourke's hand away with a swift, controlled motion of his left forearm. It is a defensive block, not a strike. Quote 9. Rourke yells into his shoulder radio. He steps back, unholsters his pepper spray, and aims it at Attawale's face. The timestamps show this radical shift in narrative occurs instantly. Rourke converts a defensive block into an quote 10 to recruit assistance. Quote 11. Attawale takes a half step back, raising his palms to shoulder height. This is the universal gesture of non-aggression. He freezes in this posture. Quote 12. Rourke is screaming now. His posture is wide, knees bent, adrenaline flooding his system. He is creating a spectacle. 2 other security guards, younger and looking confused, emerge from the lobby but hold back, watching Rourke's lead. Quote 13. Attawale remains standing. This refusal to submit to a degradation ceremony triggers Rourke further. Quote 14. Rourke lunges. At 1943-5, he tackles Dr. Attawale. The diplomat, caught off guard by the sheer irrationality of the attack, falls backward onto the red carpet. Rourke lands on top of him, driving a knee into Attawale's lower back. Quote 15. Rourke shouts commands that contradict the physical reality. Attawale is pinned face down, his face pressed into the synthetic fibers of the carpet. He is not fighting. He is trying to breathe. Quote 16. Attawale's voice is strained due to the thoracic compression. Quote 17. Rourke wrenches Attawale's left arm upward at a 45-degree angle, stressing the rotator cuff. He applies a pair of plastic flex cuffs, tightening them to the point where the skin bunches immediately. At 1948-10, a Metro PD cruiser arrives. 2 officers, Miller and Kowalski, exit the vehicle. They see a uniformed guard kneeling on a black man in a suit. Their initial visual assessment relies on the -18, the cognitive shortcut that assumes the person in the uniform is the lawful actor. Quote 19. Rourke is breathless, sweating. He stands up, leaving Attawale cuffed on the ground. He points an accusing finger at the diplomat. Quote 20. Officer Miller approaches Attawale. He does not help him up. He keeps his hand near his holster. Quote 21. Attawale speaks from the ground. His cheek is abraded from the carpet. His suit is covered in dust. Quote 22. Miller looks down, skeptical. The use of the term, quote 23, indicates he views Attawale as a suspect, not a victim. Quote 24. Miller bends down and reaches into the jacket. He pulls out a slim leather wallet. He opens it. Inside is not a standard driver's license, but a blue Department of State diplomatic identification card with a red stripe. Quote 25. Miller frowns, angling the card toward the street lamp. He has likely never seen one before. Quote 26. Rourke interjects, stepping closer to the officer, trying to control the narrative. Quote 27. Attawale's voice is calm, piercing through the chaotic scene. He recites the legal code from memory. Quote 28. Rourke gestures wildly at Adewale, who is disheveled and cuffed. Rourke is using the visual aftermath of his own violence as evidence of Adewale's criminality. Officer Miller pauses. He looks at the card, then at Rourke, then at the man on the ground. The holographic seal on the card catches the light. It does not look printed from the internet. Quote 29. Miller hands the card to his partner. Quote 30. Rourke insists, his voice rising in pitch. Quote 31. Miller's tone shifts. He steps between Rourke and Adewale. The officer's training regarding federal credentials, however dusty, is beginning to kick in. Quote 32. Kowalski speaks into his radio. There is a 10-second silence on the audio recording. The ambient noise of traffic seems to fade. Rourke is shifting his weight from foot to foot, his arms crossed defensively. Quote 33. The dispatcher's voice is clear. The words, quote 34, hang in the air. Officer Miller looks at the handcuffs on Adewale's wrists. He looks at Rourke. The realization hits Miller first. He has facilitated the unlawful imprisonment of a high-ranking foreign official. Quote 35. Miller doesn't wait for Rourke. He kneels down and pulls out his cutting tool. Quote 36. Rourke is panicking. The reality he constructed is collapsing under the weight of federal verification. Quote 37. Miller slices the flex cuffs. Adewale sits up, rubbing his wrists. He does not scramble away. He stands slowly, dusting off his pants. He checks his watch. Quote 38. Adewale says. He looks directly at Officer Miller. Quote 39. He points to Rourke. Quote 40. The power dynamic has fully inverted. The man in the dirt is now the man citing the federal code. There is a complex moral dilemma here. The police officer initially trusted the security guard's word because of his uniform, leaving the victim cuffed on the ground. In high-stress situations, law enforcement often defaults to trusting the person who looks like authority. Should Officer Miller face disciplinary action for not verifying the ID before allowing the situation to persist, or was he just following protocol until the radio confirmation came through? Comment with your verdict below. The turning point is quiet. It is not marked by screaming, but by the drainage of color from Kevin Rourke's face. Officer Miller stands up and turns toward the security guard. The camaraderie of the uniform is gone. Miller is now looking at Rourke not as a colleague, but as a liability. Turn around, Rourke. Miller pulls his handcuffs from his belt. You can't be serious. I was doing my job. He was trespassing. Rourke backs up, his hands raised. He looks to his two junior guards for support, but they have retreated into the shadows of the doorway, distancing themselves from the radioactive fallout of his actions. You assaulted a federal protectee. Turn around. Miller grabs Rourke's wrist. The mechanics of the arrest are identical to what Rourke did to Adewale minutes earlier, but the context is inverted. Rourke is spun around and cuffed. The camera zooms in on his face at 19:51:30. The arrogance is replaced by a look of total confusion. He cannot process that his authority, which he believed was absolute within the boundaries of the club, has been nullified by a higher tier of power he failed to recognize. Dr. Adewale retrieves his portfolio from the ground. He checks the contents. He straightens his tie. Officer, ensure the report reflects that he was informed of my status prior to the physical attack. The video from the club entrance will corroborate this. Adewale points to the camera above the door. Rourke looks up at the lens, realizing for the first time that the device he used to monitor others has now documented his own destruction. Yes, sir. We'll secure the footage. Miller is respectful now, almost deferential. The shift in his tone is palpable. He knows the State Department will be calling his precinct captain within the hour. The legal and financial aftermath was, unlike the arrest, a slow and grinding process. Justice in these cases is rarely swift. It is a war of paperwork and liability. Dr. Adewale did not attend the gala that night. Instead, he went to Georgetown University Hospital to document his injuries: a sprained rotator cuff, lumbar contusions, and soft tissue damage to his wrists. These medical records became the foundation of the civil suit. Within 24 hours, the Nigerian embassy filed a formal protest with the U.S. State Department. The Secretary of State's office issued a formal apology, elevating the incident to an international diplomatic dispute. This political pressure ensured that the criminal charges against Rourke were not dropped or plea bargained down to a misdemeanor. Kevin Rourke was charged with assaulting a foreign official, a federal crime, and false imprisonment. Ironclad Protection Services immediately terminated his employment, issuing a statement condemning his actions and claiming he violated company policy regarding the use of force. They attempted to distance themselves to protect their corporate insurance policy. However, Adewale's legal team, led by high-profile civil rights attorneys, uncovered the negligent retention evidence. They subpoenaed Rourke's personnel file, revealing the 3 prior complaints of racial bias and aggression that Ironclad had ignored. This proved that the company knew Rourke was a danger, but kept him in a position of authority anyway. The lawsuit demanded damages for physical injury, emotional distress, and punitive damages for civil rights violations. The trial was avoided. Ironclad's insurers, recognizing that a jury would likely award a massive sum after seeing the video of a diplomat being tackled, opted to settle. The settlement was finalized 14 months later. $7 million. This amount included compensation for Adewale and a mandatory revision of Ironclad's training protocols. Rourke faced the criminal justice system alone. Without the corporate lawyers to shield him, he was convicted of federal assault. He was sentenced to 30 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. He was also permanently barred from holding a security license in any state. The payout was massive, but let's consider the reality. $7 million is a life-changing sum, but it came at the cost of public humiliation and physical trauma for a man who has dedicated his life to diplomacy. Often, large settlements are viewed as a win, but they also serve as a way for corporations to buy their way out of admitting systemic guilt. Do you think $7 million is fair compensation, or should the company executives who ignored Rourke's previous behavior also face criminal charges? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Today, Dr. Samuel Adewale continues his work with the United Nations. He used a portion of the settlement to establish a legal defense fund for immigrants and travelers who face profiling by private security firms. He has recovered physically, though he reportedly suffers from residual back pain. He has never returned to the Vanguard Club, which faced a massive boycott and rebranded 2 years after the incident in an attempt to shed the negative publicity. Kevin Rourke was released from federal custody 6 months ago. He is currently unemployed and living with relatives in Maryland. The felony conviction prevents him from working in law enforcement, security, or owning a firearm. His financial situation is dire. He faces civil liens related to the incident, as the insurance company is suing him to recoup a portion of the settlement, a common clause in liability contracts for intentional criminal acts. The final reflection on this case brings us back to the camera above the door. That lens is impartial. It does not see status, race, or history. It captures only photons and sound waves. Yet, the 2 men standing beneath it saw 2 completely different realities. Rourke saw a threat to his territory. Adewale saw a violation of his rights. The tragedy is that Rourke believed his uniform gave him the power to define reality. He believed that being a gatekeeper meant he could choose who was worthy of respect. He failed to understand that in a society governed by laws, authority is not about force, it is about legitimacy. When he put his hands on a man who held the highest form of legal legitimacy, he didn't just break the law, he shattered the illusion of his own power. The video serves as a permanent testament to that error. It reminds us that bias is not just a moral failing. It is a tactical error that can destroy a life in less than 5 minutes. Let me know your thoughts in the comments.